Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA Nations race at Brands Hatch in Group 4 cars. Now this was the full layout of the GP circuit. I was driving the McGann Group 4 car, the trophy version. I think the majority of the field were in this car. Now there was a problem with this race. As we went into the lobby, I wasn't on the seat at that point and came back and realised that starting qualifying there was only actually 12 people left in the lobby. So an issue that we've had numerous times with Gran Turismo, half the lobby disconnected, points get dropped down. So this is a top split race and the points for winning this race are 2,200 points. And we still have fast drivers in here. We've got Manuel Rodri, we've got Nisman there, we had Stefanzi also in P2. I managed to put a pretty decent lap in. It wasn't actually that great, if I'm honest. It was a 28.4. Good enough for pole position in this lobby, though. But, however, my first race of the day, we did a 28.3. And unfortunately, I think I went on the wrong strategy. I did do a no-stopper, and I think I did it wrong. I had the brake bias wrong. We still ended up with a reasonable result. I think we came away with 2.5 or around 2.4k points, something like that. Decided to race this again because I thought, why not? Let's try and get a win out this race because I felt like my speed was very good if I was pushing. Now, for this race, we changed our tactic because we saw Kauster going on. He was behind me in the previous race, and he actually went for a pit stop strategy and managed to do a massive jump. He managed to gain about 4 or 5 seconds, I think, by doing it. So in this race, I decided let's not go with the brake bias to the rear. Let's just not worry about saving tyres. Let's just go full steam ahead and push like crazy. We've only got 12 people in the lobby, nothing to lose. Let's have a bit of fun with this. You know, if we have to do some overtaking, we have to do it. But the looks of the way it was when we were driving with Kauster there was just so much more grip with the fresh tyres. It wasn't really that hard to make an overtake. So let's see this now. Pushing from the start. You can see very aggressive right from the go. I was on a mission here because I wanted to drive flat out, use up my tyre life in 9 laps basically. I say use up my tyre life, but pushing as aggressively as I pretty much can. That's why my brake bias is on +1 rather than what I would probably have gone was +4 or +3, +4, something like that if we were going to be saving tyres. But for this, we're going maximum attack, gives a bit more stability on the braking, can really chuck it in, get on the brakes nice and aggressively. And this is how I like to drive, as we get a massive donation while I was live on stream from Puke Diewalker. Big thank you to Puke again there, because it's just popped back onto my mind what an absolute legend he is for that massive donation. But we're starting from pole, doing a good job on this open lap. You can see the gap building up there, over 1.5, around 1.5 seconds, already 1.4 seconds. Slipstream is 1.5, so we've nearly broke the toe straight away on the opening lap. And this was the aim of this race, really. I really wanted to give it all on the start of the race and push like crazy, because I'm going for the pit stop strategy. Wasn't sure what other people would be doing in this lobby, as not everyone may have seen what Kauster did in the previous race. Obviously I did, because I ended up getting overtaken by him. We were ahead before the pit stop phase, and it seemed like that I was really confused that people started with this. We hadn't done any practice for this round because I hadn't been well, so I was relying on what other people had done. I'd watched Cody's stream and seen that he did a no stopper, so I thought that was the way to go, but it turns out it was not the way to go. It was quite obvious when you look at the amount of laps. Actually, it's a 19 lap race at Brands Hatch. The pit lane loss is 6 seconds. I think it was only 6 or 7 seconds, something like that. I just don't get where the no-stop strategy came about. Obviously, some people thought they could make it work with the McGann if they were really good on tyres. I know Firestorm did an amazing job at making it work, but I still think that the one-stop was the fastest way of doing this. Even for Firestorm, I think he would have been even faster doing a one-stop strategy, because you could just push 100% and really be aggressive. As you can see, I'm really pushing into the corners, pushing on the exits, not having to worry about tyre life. I know that I can go in the pits on lap 9, put a new set of tyres on and push again. And obviously I think the advantage of this is you end up building a gap anyway to some of the people in P3, 4 that aren't quite so good with tyres, and they're really trying to save their tyres for that no stopper, so they're losing more and more pace. So by the time you come out of the pits anyway, you would probably find that you're not that far behind. That's why I'm going for this really aggressive approach, and this actually is kind of a style that kind of works in my favour. I'm more that type of driver. This is how I used to race on Project Cars, because tyre wear was not really an issue on that game. It was pretty much a one-stopper on that game. You had a compulsory pit stop when I used to do the elite tier racing, and you just used to drive flat out, pit, change tyres, go flat out again. And that kind of works for me. I like that approach. It's very much more my style, you know, to slowly feel the tyres going. And with this car, again, it kind of suits me because the tyre wear is so good. Even with times, I think it was times 9 or times 10 tyre wear, it tends to be a very slow fading of loss of grip. So you kind of get the feeling like the grip's there, and you can judge where the grip's going a lot easier. As we do our first lap at 1 minute 28.8 there. Not an amazing first lap, but it's good enough to keep the consistency going. Now the aim is to obviously keep the lap times in late 28s, early 29s as much as possible, keeping that consistency all the way through. You can see we've built that gap up already to the TX3 Stefanzi to over 2 seconds already. So this is going really well for me at the start of this race. Strategy is working pretty much how I would have liked at this point, because I needed to build that gap up. And you can also see that the gap to P4 has really increased. Now obviously if we were in a lobby with 20 drivers, I think this being the last slot of the day, it wouldn't have been as competitive as others, but the points would have been about 2.7, I think, something like that, maybe just under 2.8, 2.779, something like that. But like I say, we would have probably have had a bit closer gaps in some drivers, but obviously Manuel Rodri, very fast driver at Brands Hatch, very fast driver in general in the game. So the fact that we're pulling away from him now, you can see that we've got that gap to 2.7. He's managed to get past Stefanzi. I think that the speed was fairly similar between myself and Manuel Rodri, although I think Manuel Rodri was probably going for the no stop strategy, so looking after his tyres a bit, maybe trying to keep them front alive. I really didn't care about that. You can see already pushing quite aggressively as we skip through now to lap 7, and we're coming into the really fast right hand corner on the straight in the middle of the lap. You can see going through here, driving still very aggressive. You can see down it into 4th gear on the accelerator really early, ran a little bit wide here, actually lost a bit of time, nearly lost control of the car. And this is one of my problems with the game. You run a little bit wide like that in real life, you would not be getting a penalty because you've just lost time. You can see Manuel Rodri's actually got that gap down to 2.4, 2.5. Nothing gained from it. Actually, if anything, we got a little bit of dirt on the tyres, causing us to lose a bit of grip. But it's a really strange penalty to pick up. And now this means we're going to get, obviously, take that half a second penalty straight away. And going to give P2 a chance to get very close to us. You're going to see now that gap already down to 1.6, 1.7. So half a second penalty, you actually lose nearer to a second because it slows you down. You've got to get back up to speed. And that's unfortunate because I was a little bit worried. I wasn't too worried though, because I felt like a second off the pace. I felt like the fresh tyres were still going to be good enough after what I've seen Kelsey do to push on and still maybe challenge for the lead in this race. So the aim now is just to stay out till lap 9. Keep it nice and consistent, still pushing. Obviously the tyres are starting, they're not fading, I'm still able to match Manuel Rodri pretty much. You can see the delta is staying at 1.6. We've got it back up to 1.7, I think there. So able to still pull away slightly. Different corners I tended to have different strengths to Manuel Rodri. I think on some corners I was pulling away, other corners he was gaining a bit. There is a couple of corners where you have to be really early on the power in Group 4, especially with a car like the Megane, because it's got so much mid-corner apex speed that you have to be preemptive of when to put the throttle down so that you get the maximum acceleration out of the corner. But this time coming into this corner, don't run quite so far wide, you see. Actually did that better that time, more speed carried through, got the apex better, and probably went faster than before, but no penalty. That's the again, I really hope that they can do something about this. I think what we need on the game, I've mentioned it so many times, it's like a warning system, like a free strike, and then you get a bigger penalty. So you don't get any penalty for only minor ones like that. Obviously if you cut a corner, you gain an advantage, then yeah, you need a penalty. But for ones like what we just got the half a second for, I think they could do a different system, a free strike system. You run a little bit wide out the corner, you get a warning. Second time, another warning. Third time, 2-second penalty or 3-second penalty. Punish you a bit more severe once you go over that limit for the third time, because in a 19-lap race, the majority of drivers are going to make 1 or 2 errors running a little bit wide when pushing, especially when you've got Manuel Rodri pushing behind. You can see the gap down to 1.3 seconds. He's obviously driving very aggressive now. He's also got probably slightly better front tyres, because the way I drove, I tried to build that gap up, but we've lost a second of that gap through overdriving it and picking up that penalty, obviously, which is a big shame as we go into the braking zone now. Final lap before I pit, I was going to pit on lap 9. You saw some drivers actually pitted on lap 8, going for the longest stint on the second stint. I had the luxury pretty much of going to lap 9 because I could see that there was plenty of gap behind me. I'd built up a nice cushion with a very well driven first stint. So this lap we're going to go in the pits, change them tyres, and we're going to come out probably in P3, to be honest, because you can see on the track map that there is a big gap behind Stefanzi up to P4. Now I think like I said before, if there was 20 drivers in this lobby, we'd have probably, I think we'd be looking at coming out about P5 or P6, because the field spread would be a bit closer. So we'd probably go down to about P5, P6, something like that. But still, I think from that position with the extra grip you have, we still could have got our way all the way back up into the lead. We'll have to see how this goes out once we pit, whether I can actually get past Stefanzi and Manuel Rodri, how easy it is as we go in the pit lane, trying to maximise the entry. You see, cutting that little bit of tarmac, really nicely done, actually really well executed in that pit lane. Probably gained myself half a second over some drivers there, because we really attacked that and got it perfectly nailed. As we put the camera angle, for some reason it had gone onto the cockpit view. Coming out the pit in P3 with a bit of a gap to P4 as well, so that shows you this strategy clearly can work. We're only 4 seconds behind Stefanzi, and I think he's only a couple of seconds behind Manuel Rodri. So the pit lane loss is around 6 to 7 seconds. Now, maybe even less than that. It looks like Stefanzi is in the slipstream of Manuel Rodri. So yeah, I think the pit lane loss was probably 5.5 to 6 seconds. That shows you that the strategy really was the one-stop strategy, because even if we had 2 more cars in front of us now, I don't think it would have been that hard to overtake him, because just look how much more grip we have out of this car. Because the people that are not pitting, their tyres are going to start fading around this point now. They're going to start dropping off to mid 29s and then go into the late 29s, whereas these fresh tyres are going to be capable of doing mid to low 28s and probably even 28 1s and 2s if you really nail a lap. Maybe even faster if you push like crazy. But obviously for me, I'm just trying to keep it consistent and make sure these tyres still last all the way to the end of the race. We've got 9 laps to go. Keep the lap times nice and consistent. Don't overdrive the car. We don't want to make any big mistakes and lose the possibility of a win, because looking at the gaps, we've got a very good chance of coming away with a very solid result from this. As you can see, that gap is really closing down to Stefanzi there. It's just every corner, every traction zone, you can see the delta getting smaller and smaller. It's mainly on traction zones where you can get on the throttle that little bit early with this Megane that you find that you gain the time. As we now skip a few laps on, you can see we've managed to catch Stefanzi up. We're on lap 12, starting lap 13 now, and we've got that gap into the slipstream range. So now we can start putting the pressure on and look to overtake him. It didn't take very long to catch him up, and you can also see in the lead we have Manuel Rodri, who obviously as well is still trying to look after them tyres. He's got the gap covered to Stefanzi. You can see on the replay camera. We're going to close in as fast as possible on Stefanzi. You're going to really see the gap close to myself and Stefanzi with the fresher tyres, and you can also see Manuel Rodri picking up some dust there in the distance. He's obviously pushing, knowing that he's probably seeing myself right behind Stefanzi. He's probably realised at this point that he's on the wrong strategy, but it's too late for him to really make an alteration to his strategy at this point, because once you've gone past lap 12, 13, if you pit, you're not going to get the benefit of them fresh tyres. So there is no point pitting for him. He's got to hang this out and see if he can just hold on to P1 or even just try and pick up a P2. Although I don't think many people really cared, to be honest, because 8 drivers were disconnected from the lobby. So the motivation was just to have a bit of fun in this race. That's why I wanted to go for the pit stop as well, to get some overtakes done. As you can see, really putting Stefanzi under a lot of pressure. Then fresher tyres, so much more grip, so much more traction. As we're going to have a little look on the right hand side, can we go for a move into this corner? You see, putting the front end there just so he knows I'm there. And now we're going to get so much better traction from that right hand corner. You can see more grip on the front, onto the power, more traction, more speed down the straight. Stefanzi, not much he can do to defend that, and I think he just pretty much says go for it. There's no point in me defending that. And now we're up into P2 in this race, and now we've got to hunt down Manuel Rodri and see how close, see how quickly we can gain that time on him to try and make an overtake. As you see, going into turn 2, trying to hold a nice tight line onto the power nice and early. You can see that gap, 2.6, 2.7 seconds, and that's going to be quickly coming down. Every traction zone, every fast corner, we're going to be able to gain time on him all the way around the lap. But one thing we have to do also here now is make sure we maintain the consistency as well, and not overdrive the car, because you can get lured into this sense you've got to push like crazy. You've got to try your hardest and go maximum, you know, like flat out, and you tend to make mistakes if you do that. So we're just trying to keep that rhythm going, keep it nice and consistent. You can see on the lap times again, really nice driving at the moment, nice and consistent. We're chasing down a World Tour driver. You know, Manuel Rodri is a very fast Gran Turismo driver, so we've got to push reasonably hard. But I felt like the extra advantage these fresher tyres are going to give, it's going to be easy enough to catch him up. You can see the advantage already through the corners. We're gaining temps just on entries, and then the exit of corner we're gaining even more. You can see that gap now under 2 seconds, and you can really see the advantage. We look at that amazing camera. I love watching this game from them cameras on the floor. I wish there was more of them and used a little bit more often really on the replay cameras, as they look they really look amazing when you're watching from that angle. As we now start the lap for lap number 15 now, and you can see that gap, we nearly got in the slipstream range. It's not going to be long before we're going to be able to put him under pressure to get in the lead in this race, and this really does highlight just how much better this strategy was, just so much faster than one-stop strategy. And I was so confused that no one was doing it. I think Kausler tried it and then just really surprised a lot of people with how overpowered it was, especially if you drive it the right way and you make sure that you can get the overtakes done in the correct spot. Now, Brands Hatch isn't the easiest track to overtake, but I think this car, with the benefits the fresh tyres give you, actually makes overtaking a lot simpler than what a lot of people probably expected it to. Now, some drivers could have made it harder, but I think that what you would have been doing would have been costing yourself overall lap time anyway. So the majority of drivers that drive with a bit of racecraft will just probably let you go and just keep their race pace going and try and hang on in your slipstream for a while, as we now approach Manuel Rodriguez going through these last few corners, as Manuel Rodriguez suffering with that tyre wear, and that is another risk. When them tyres start fading, you do run the risk of losing control of the car, because it's got more understeer, less grip on the rear. As we're going into this left-hand corner, that you have to get on the throttle so early. You look how we get on the throttle, you're almost on the throttle before you're hitting the apex of the corner, and that is a corner that you really have to get used to pushing on, especially in this car with so much grip out of the McGann Trophy. Is going into this final corner, you can just see he's putting his hazards on. He's not going to fight this because he knows it's not worth him fighting. He's just going to let us go and secure his P2 in this race and tuck into our slipstream and probably try and gain a little bit of time on his next lap, because obviously with worn tyres, it is quite a good idea to just, rather than fight in a car with fresh tyres, let that car go, you slip into their slipstream, you gain a second on your neck, or half a second or something, use some of their extra traction to gain down the straights, and it's just the more sensible way to drive it, rather than defending like crazy and losing a second and a half a lap and letting himself become under pressure from another driver. He's just going to let us go and tuck into our slipstream, and that's very, in my opinion, that's the kind of racecraft you have to do in that situation. Like, if it would have been the last lap, I think he would have fought that 100%. Last 2 laps, he would have fought that, because there might have been a chance of him maintaining that P1, but with 4 laps to go, it's not really worth doing. You're going to be basically putting yourself under more chance of getting overtaken from another driver rather than actually defending your position, because there was just so much more traction on this car, and every lap the traction advantage was becoming more and more because his tyres were so faded. As we now go through this final section, getting on the grass a little bit there, nearly making a mistake, just skimmed that grass, and that's something you've got to be careful of when you're pushing. Obviously, you don't want to make a mistake at the end of the race, but managed to catch it fairly well and carry on this lap to finish lap 16. You can see that gap almost out of the slipstream already, but he's still in that slipstream range, so he's still getting an advantage as we now skip through to the end of lap 19. And you can see I've managed to build that lead up to nearly 5 seconds, and that shows you the advantage of the one stop. So it was actually quite, I think overall it was probably about 5 seconds faster. Now obviously I got that penalty because you have to take that into account, because obviously on the first stint you can push more aggressively as well. I think I would have had about a 2-second lead going into the pits, which probably would have made this gap to a little bit further on, obviously, by the end of the race. So yeah, some of it was helped by the fact that we didn't have as much traffic, but I think I would have still came out with, if there was 20 drivers in this race, we would have probably come out around P5, maybe P6, but I still think with the severe advantage, you can see we're over 5.5 seconds in the lead now. I think that would have been comfortable to maybe still win the race by a few seconds, because there was just so much more traction as we go down the main straight and over the line to take a win. A win is a win, even if it's only 12 drivers in the race. We still had to beat some very good drivers, and we take a pretty decent lap finishing time as well. Obviously we got that penalty, so it would have probably been a 20:22 finishing time, which was not a bad time at all. I think Firestorm did it in 2018, I think, something like that, with a no stop. But this is Firestorm at the moment. He's like absolutely on fire, driving amazing, one of the fastest drivers on the game at the moment, in my opinion. As we pick up our points, our amazing 2,200 points for a win in top split. Quite disappointing, if I'm honest, because you should be getting more points than that no matter how many disconnections you have. I think they need to do something with the disconnections, because it seems to be a problem that late at night. They seem to have problems with the servers. I don't know if it's because of overlapping into different regions races. Maybe the American region is overlapping with the EU region, and it's causing strain on the servers. Possibly that could be an issue. Maybe they need to have a little think about the times of these races, and try and get them a bit closer, because there is quite a bit of a gap at the moment between each race. Maybe they could shorten that gap down by 10 minutes to by the end of the night, maybe have the race about 50 minutes earlier, maybe 40 minutes earlier, something like that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that race. I enjoyed racing it. Really fun car to drive around Brands Hatch. Picked up a very good result, even if it wasn't for the biggest points. We still enjoyed the race, and I hope you enjoyed that video as well. Anyway, thanks again for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscription button, and don't forget to hit that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks again for watching, everyone.